Hello, good evening, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Member Forum. And this is Sujit Christie, President, ISC Squared Colombo Chapter. We welcome all of you for this evening session. We've been continuing to do this every week or every other week, bringing different speakers talking about different topics. And today we have our very own member, Niranjan Disanayake, a CISSP and a CCSP. He's well known in the industry. He currently serves as the Chief Technology Officer of Just-in-Time Group. So he's here to talk about the current status of cybersecurity or the trends, right? So you can have any different ways you can name this topic, but for me, it is a good time to take stock. So before we start proceedings, those of you who would like to get your CPEs, I would like you to change your name as you would want it to appear in your CPE records, because a first name basis, I may find it difficult to relate to your registration link. So if you can change your display names, so it will become much more easier for us to track and award your CPEs. Second is that we also welcome those people who are in this session right now live. And those of you who are going to be listening to this session, we invite you to volunteer yourself to talk about a subject which you think would be of interest to the members or the community at large. So we are looking out for volunteers to speak, to help with the chapter activities. So if you are interested, please reach out to me. We'll be more than happy to accommodate you to do a program of this nature. So without further ado, I invite Niranjan. Niranjan, over to you.
Thanks, Sujit. Thank you. Let me share my screen. Right. Okay. Okay. I hope the screen is fully visible and I'm audible.
You are loud and clear. Screen
okay.
is visible
Thanks,
as well. Awesome.
Okay. Right. Good evening, everyone. And it's nice to see you all here for another session of the Member Forum. So I'll be talking about some of the modern technologies and modern technologies which are related to cybersecurity and day-to-day things that we see in the industry, and some hot topics and buzzwords which are emerging. For the Sri Lankan market at least, and we will see what we need to implement to have a proper cybersecurity architecture. And in the latter part, I would like to, if possible, have a discussion with you. Maybe you can share your thoughts as well on the current landscape, current cybersecurity landscape of Sri Lanka. I mean, people may be having different thoughts about it, so we'll try to identify any issues, so maybe positive signs that you see. And also in the latter part, I will try to cover an important cybersecurity act as well. So as Sujit explained, introduced, I work as the Chief Technology Officer for Just-in-Time Group. So I have been with the ISC Squad for a long time and conducting sessions as well. So basically, this will be your agenda for the today's session. So mainly, I want to focus on 4 things. So this is not an in-depth session on the cybersecurity technologies, but merely a guide on how to learn things and how to research for things, and how you can get an understanding about technologies, about cybersecurity technologies, because we don't have enough time to go through everything. But I will try to guide you on what to implement in your infrastructure and what technologies you need to focus in the coming 2 to 5 years. So, before implementing any cybersecurity technology, we should understand what we are going to achieve. So we have talked about a lot of attack methodologies, different kinds of technologies people use to hack into environments, and different strategies as well. But during the last 2 to 3 years, we saw the rise of new things. So we know AI and ML are used by cybersecurity solution developers to detect, correlate, prevent, and respond to attacks. But now attackers are also using artificial intelligence and machine learning to come up with various methodologies to penetrate into networks. So AI and ML are not only used by cybersecurity engineers or information security analysts or people who are trying to prevent attacks. So they are used by attackers as well. So it's a trend that we have been seeing. So I did an in-depth session 2 weeks back, I think 3 weeks back, to discuss about AI and ML technologies in the modern era and how they are incorporated in cybersecurity solutions. So you can go through it to identify what kind of attack methodologies people can deploy against AI and ML, and how AI and ML can be used to various purposes as well. Then mobile security threats. I mean, during the COVID time as well, we saw a rise in spam messages and phishing attempts in mobile security SMSs and WhatsApp messages, and maybe in Facebook or LinkedIn. So they basically target mobile devices, and people these messages are very attractive, and people click on those things without thinking twice. I mean, as cybersecurity professionals, we might be able to identify those things, but common people, they don't have any knowledge or experience to identify those fake messages. So mobile security threats are rising, and people are using mobile devices to browse through corporate applications, or maybe to get and send the corporate emails, or maybe they are having some other corporate clients or applications as well. So mobile security threats are very risky, and so we have to identify them proactively to prevent. And cryptojacking is related to cryptocurrency. That's when attackers and people use your computing power to mine cryptocurrency. So you don't even know whether your computing resources are being used. You have CPU power, your hard disk drive, your memory, and your CPU cycles are being used by attackers to harvest cryptocurrency. That means cryptocurrency mining, and that's a rising attack methodology as well. Then IoT based attacks. So there are a lot of smart devices connected with each other in the internet as well. Maybe it could be a refrigerator or an AC machine, or maybe CCTVs, or maybe some other sensors as well, or maybe some household appliances. So attackers can use these IoT based devices to launch attacks against other environments. As an example, we can take a DDoS attack, distributed denial of service attack. Where people use these IoT devices and generate a lot of traffic to bring another service down. So during the last few years, we saw refrigerators, AC machines being connected in a large scale worldwide DDoS attacks, and they are very successful because these IoT devices, they don't come with a lot of CPU power. They don't have a lot of memory power. So unless the main code is developed in a very hardened way, you can't deploy additional security software or preventive mechanisms on these IoT devices. So attackers can easily penetrate them if they are not properly designed and produced. Right? Then remote working related attacks. So with the COVID pandemic, I mean, these are pretty common examples. People started working remotely, so they might be using their own laptops, and there are different devices connected to corporate network. People had to open up services and applications to other, and services, applications, and corporate infrastructure to the outside world. So the threat landscape increased dramatically. So if someone attacks a laptop that an employee is using at home, then they can probably easily penetrate into the corporate environment as well. The ransomware attacks, we know, but ransomware has been there, but now we see ransomware getting more and more sophisticated, right? And so earlier times, ransomware was there, but sometimes we could program our endpoint security solutions or advanced ransomware protection solutions to easily detect those things. But now it's really hard. because these ransomware also use AI and ML technologies, and they have different variants. They polymerize, and so it's not easy to identify them, right? And social engineering. So with the current global situation, and maybe even if you take the Sri Lankan context as well, so when people are stressed and people are panicked and anxious and depressed and all, so it's pretty easy to lure someone into an attack. And also, like now, most people are working on mobile devices, and like there are a lot of automated processors, and there are call centers to support people. So everything is online. So we are getting overwhelmed with all these applications and services and everything like running around us. And when people are involved in these with multiple tasks at hand, so it's kind of easy to uh, fool people and get things done, because like people tend to trust other people easily. So this is something in the rise, because like with everything happening around us, all the technologies and like all these things, like it's kind of easy to actually fool people, like compared with earlier times. And biomedical devices are getting connected as well. So we see a rise in smart medical devices. I mean, as a very common example, you might have seen instances where people hack into medical devices attached to hearts, right? So like I'm like to keep the heart rate at a constant phase. We can attach certain sensors into the heart, and there have been instances where people hacked into these medical devices as well. So think you can like increase the heartbeat, or you can just quickly stop the heart. So it's those are very I mean like very easy attacks. And also electronic medical records, EMR. So EMR, like now systems are getting integrated. There are platforms coming up. So hospitals, police stations, and judicial services, and maybe forensics. I mean, like globally, in countries, they are connected to a single platform through APIs and all. So there are EMRs being shared with each other, and some with certain techniques, people can get this personal info out, right? And also vehicles, connected and semi-autonomous vehicles. So if you search in the YouTube or Google, you will see there were certain very recent attacks where people hacked into semi-autonomous vehicles, right? There's a video in YouTube, you can search it. Two people hacking into a semi-autonomous vehicle and autonomous connected vehicle, and they just start the vehicle, and after that they can do whatever they want. So imagine if you want to kill someone, kill an important person while they are on the road, so you can hack into the vehicle and do whatever you want. So these are I mean like semi-autonomous and connected vehicles are pretty cool technologies, but there are inherent weaknesses which are attached to them as well. Then state-sponsored attacks. So I mean, if you search in the internet, the amount of money North Korea has earned during the past years just by using hacking and penetrating into like people's data and stealing people's data and destroying other property as well. So it is a tremendous amount. So these are becoming income sources for countries like North Korea, and maybe in the future, we don't know, maybe with the current global state, maybe Russia will get into that state as well. But these are becoming income sources for countries which are getting isolated from the rest of the world. And insider threats. So some of the insider threats could be intentional, but some could not be. Some are unintentional. But as I mentioned, under social engineering as well, so you can probably bribe a person, or maybe give some benefits to them to get a certain thing done. And sometimes they might not even know what they are doing. So without intentionally or unintentionally, insider threats are becoming one of the key contributors for data breaches and attacks. Misconfigurations and human errors. So there are a lot of information security solutions out there, and the landscape is increasing day by day. And and cybersecurity professionals are very easily stressed and overwhelmed with the work, the amount of work that they have to do. I mean, like doing day-to-day operations, deploying products, and like doing reports, and like investigations, forensics, and contaminations, and whatever. So there are a lot of work that these people have to do, and when you are overwhelmed with work, you tend to make mistakes. So misconfigurations happen, and they might skip best practices, so they might forget to follow best practices. So misconfigurations and human errors are pretty high, and there are solutions to detect these things as well, and we will talk about these in the coming slides. But these are becoming very common. And we can't forget phishing as well. So earlier days, it was pretty easy to identify a phishing message. But now, if you see these things in emails and all, they are very, very sophisticated. And I am getting, I don't know, like maybe you put your email address to maybe a research site or maybe a news site or anything. So like your email addresses are very open in the internet. So there are certain messages that I get. I mean, like they are very sophisticated, and I like if you don't know about these messages, a common person will probably uh, fall for it, because they are actually targeted. They know something very personal to you, and they create the message in such a way that you are tempted to click on a link or provide your personal information. So they're very sophisticated, not like earlier days, right? And also, last but not least, cyber physical attacks. What are cyber physical attacks? That means, let's say we have electric grids, and water supplies, and maybe gas supplies, and also those are physical systems connected. They have their own networks. Maybe they might be connected to internet as well through another backend system, or maybe they are isolated, but still some people can penetrate into these physical systems, right? So you might have heard the very common and very common example is that the how the Stuxnet attack happened. With Stuxnet, people penetrated into very and highly secured nuclear power plants. So in the same way, people can get into electric grids or water supply systems as well. So those are cyber physical attacks. So these are in the rise as well. So these are some of the common trends in the world right now. So I didn't want to provide statistics, because if you want to get any statistic, you can just browse in the internet and get an idea about that. So any questions that you want to ask from this section before I move to the next one? Or maybe you can put in the chat, and Sujit will filter it out, and we'll discuss it in the later part. Right. Sujit, you're on mute.
No, let's take the discussion after your presentation.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, all right, thank you.
Right, and if you looked into Gartner top trends in cybersecurity, so this is the latest set of trends. So these are not related to prevention only, but you can see certain adversarial trends as well. So one is attack surface expansion. That means, as I mentioned earlier, your environment and your landscape, internal or external landscape is getting expanded. So you are having a lot of solutions deployed. Your network infrastructure is expanding with remote working and opening up services to outside world. You are partnering up with different suppliers. Your supply chain gets expanded, and you are integrating more and more with customers there, and there's a whole set of ecosystems which is evolving. So attack surface is obviously getting expanded, because there are the number of points which can be exploited by attackers are getting increased, right? Then identity system defense. So it's actually a preventive thing, because attacking for identity systems is rising, because attackers have realized that without coming a long way, you can directly penetrate into an identity service provider. So if you penetrate into an IT service provider, you can get into a whole new world, right? So attackers are trying to use this one without coming to the organization from another way and doing lateral movement and everything. So people can easily get into identity service providers networks and get all the data out. And if that data is accurate, then that data can be used to access a lot of other services. Right? And supply chain risk, definitely, because supply chain is increasing. I mean, if you have seen attacks like this SolarWinds attack and Kaseya attack, so attackers are using a service or maybe an agent or a client or a solution that suppliers or third-party service providers have deployed in a customer's environment, right? And through that channel, through that supply chain, by attacking that supplier's solutions or some technical entity, attackers can get into the customer environment, right? So because I mean, customers, they protect their environment, implement all kinds of information security solutions, but they sometimes fail to evaluate and monitor suppliers solutions. I mean, like in Kaseya attack, people have used this client provided by managed service providers, and so through that, people were able to get into the network. So you have to have policies to prevent against those, a lot of monitoring mechanisms as well. So we talk about those things later, but supply chain is becoming a huge risk. Then a preventive mechanism, vendor consolidation. So earlier we thought that, okay, we have earlier people thought that the best practice was to deploy different solutions from different vendors at each layer. So we know there are concepts like defense in depth and layered security protection. So people thought that they could deploy different solutions at each layer, maybe one vendor for email, one vendor for endpoint, another vendor for network, maybe another total different vendor for firewall. So that's what people thought. Then you are secure but now vendors are consolidating their security solutions and coming with a single architecture. And if you take third-party reports, maybe Forrester or Gartner and IDC or something, you will see that they also recommend to implement a single fabric or single mesh architecture supplied from a single vendor. And we'll look into the concepts like XDR as well. So vendors are consolidating their platforms and they come up with these connected architectures, right? So it's pretty easy to identify, correlate, prevent, and respond to attacks, because if you are having partnerships with different vendors, sometimes there are integration issues, compatibility issues. But if all the systems are from one vendor, then it's pretty easy, right? And then cybersecurity mesh. So it's also the same. It also comes under this XDR story, or maybe connected threat defense story, and solutions are getting integrated with each other, sharing information, sharing threat intelligence, sharing logs and detections, and they can be correlated to get a single view on the environment, right? And if an attack is detected at the endpoint, if the information is shared with all the other solutions instantaneously, then that can be blocked in the complete landscape, or maybe the complete corporate surface, right? Then distributed decisions. Distributed decisions. I mean, earlier there was this centralized control, right? Even though the network is distributed, the control was centralized. People tend to implement policies and implement technical controls central. But now with the global trend evolution, there are a lot of distributed organizations, and so even though there are CISOs and like the central entities looking into the big picture, but different people are appointed, different people are given authority to implement their own security controls and implement their security policies, because the dynamics are changing very rapidly. So one thing that you do in a country, particular country might not be relevant to the other country at that point. So we have to dynamically respond to the situations, and people are given authority to work according to that country's or global locations prevailing situation. Those are called distributed decisions. And finally, beyond awareness means like if you take the corporate environments, earlier there were awareness campaigns, training campaigns, right? People just explained different things to you, maybe how ransom, I mean, like basic security training for non-IT employees. But awareness is not enough right now. You have to have, every employee has to play an active role in the company when it comes to information security. So there are very interactive and sophisticated training methodologies and knowledge transfer methodologies where there are practical ways to teach employees to how to do things. I mean, phishing campaigns and other engaging activities, right? So there's a whole new Forrester report for this security awareness and training as well, because the importance of it has increased, right? So you can search and see, search and identify the vendors there and go through their solutions, but the normal awareness will not work right now. So you have to have a next gen methodology to train people to identify a security threat in your environment. I mean, it applies not only for IT people, but for non-IT employees as well. Right. Okay, I don't know whether you have already seen these Gartner hype cycles, but I'm not going to go into a lot of depth into Gartner hype cycle. There are 5 or 6 main Gartner hype cycles. So I'll briefly walk you through these things. So this is the place, this is the report where you can get an understanding about the trending information security technologies, trending cybersecurity technologies, right? So I'll if you haven't seen this before, I'll guide you on how to read this cycle. So you can see 2 axes. The horizontal one is time, the other one is expectation. So when a certain technology, not only cybersecurity, any technology, when technology is introduced to the community, introduced to the world, so there's something called innovation trigger. That means at the beginning, like there are a lot of innovations happening, right? So the technology is new and people are amazed, and so it's pretty new. It's a whole new concept to the market, and it's like your expectations are going up. So it's at the peak level because there's nothing else to compare. So that's called innovation trigger. So we all know that when something is announced, I mean, like let's say a new phone, right? When something is announced, it's people get hyped and we get excited, right? And also our expectations out of that product goes high as well. So that's where this excuse me a second. That's where this peak of inflated expectations happen. So you have a lot of expectations. You want a lot of things out of that solution or technology or product, whatever. And then after a certain period of time, there's a disillusionment period. I mean, people tend to realize that okay, I expected this from that product, but that product is actually not giving what I really want, right? Okay, so most of the people, I mean, if their expectations are really high, and so they tend to get frustrated, and and they think that they were having illusions, and so their eagerness, their enthusiasm for that particular product or technology dies off. But still, there are people who remain faithful to that technology and who are still learning and exploring that technology, and certain people will be adding and developing those technologies as well. Then there's something called slope of enlightenment. That means with the people who were continuously engaged with that solution, I mean, there are users as well as developers, and there are contributors. So with their efforts and all, there's a slope of enlightenment, because they now have realized to get the maximum out of that technology or the product, and now they have adapted that technology of product to get a use that is beneficial to the community, or maybe to a customer, or maybe to a corporate environment, right now. But it might not be it might not satisfy all the initial expectations, but there is a benefit. So in this phase as well, people realize that there's a use, and more and more people start using it as well. Then finally, there's a maturity phase which we call a plateau of productivity. That means that technology or product or solution is in the full production scale, and people are using it to the maximum level. So this is a cycle, right? So it's very simple. I mean, like, even if we take more human example, sometimes we meet new people, or maybe meet new friends, or maybe you are meeting you fall in love with the person, and you expect a lot of things from them, and then after some time you realize that it's not going to work or something, and maybe sometimes people stick with that person nevertheless, and sometimes when you stick with that person for a longer time, you realize that, okay, there's something that I can gain out of this. Okay, so it's the same thing in any technology as well. So similar example, and these colors actually tell a different story. So as you can see here, if a certain technology is in white circle, that means it will reach this plateau of productivity within less than 2 years. And if it's the like light green circle, then that technology will reach this plateau of productivity within 2 to 5 years. Okay. And if it's dark blue, that means for that solution or technology or product to reach this plateau of productivity, it will take 5 to 10 years. So I hope you can read this graph right now, because these are important if you want to see where a certain technology is. You can just refer to these cycles and get an understanding, right? So this is the hype cycle for cloud security. Most of the things we know, so I'm not going to go through everything, but there are some interesting ones, and if you want to get an understanding about something, just ask questions at the end. But I'll just browse through them randomly. So if we take this chaos engineering, it's a very new thing. I mean, there are certain entities which have been practicing that. Chaos engineering is like where you practically test the resilience of your infrastructure, especially cloud infrastructure. And if you take Netflix, they actually they have an entity called chaos monkeys. So what they do is they randomly go in and take down servers and maybe data centers, or maybe some infrastructure in the environment, and they monitor and see how quickly they can. I mean, like, not quickly. I mean, how resilient is the network is. So they can't even afford a millisecond downtime, right? So ideally, downtime is like 99.9999 or something, and so they can't afford any downtime. So they check the resiliency of their network. So that's what basically chaos engineering is. So to see how resilient you are when it comes to cloud infrastructure, right? And so CIM is basically from just explaining through some new words you might see. CIM is cloud infrastructure entitlement management. That means how you can manage the user access and user privileges in your cloud or multi-cloud environment, because user access is very, very important. There are normal users as well as privileged users logging in. And so identity and access management, privilege access management. So these are pretty important, right? And security service agent, SASE are interlinked. So in security service stage, actually, you have things like secure web gateways, CASB solutions, and zero trust network access as well. So you can see zero trust network access here as well. And SASE has secure service edge plus WAN optimization, quality of service, and SD-WAN. So these are all about providing security services and security like access to corporate networks at the edge network. Right now, these are becoming pretty common. That's why they are in light blue. So you will see them in mass production environments very soon. Then there's something called KMAS. I mean, we know platform as a service, software as a service, infrastructure as a service, maybe SOC as a service. Now we have KMAS as well, key management as a service. So if a customer has a multi-cloud environment, it might not be easy for them to manage these encryption keys and all. So people are coming up with solutions to provide you key management as a service, so that vendor will manage all the keys centrally for that particular customer, so they don't have to manage multiple keys for multiple cloud environments. Then immutable infrastructure. So in earlier days, people, I mean, like they deploy a system and maybe later, as per the requirements, they will do some updates. Maybe they will do some upgrades to that particular server, right? You deploy a server in the production environment, then later you do updates and upgrades for various purposes. But in immutable infrastructure, what you do is you don't deploy updates or upgrades. And if you need any kind of change to that particular server, you just remove it and you just deploy a completely new server with the it's something like golden image. You don't update to upgrade. So in that way, you can eliminate errors and configuration issues like that. So you have an image with that particular, you create an image with that particular update to update, then you deploy a completely new server, right? So and other things like cloud services posture management. So posture management applies not only to cloud services but also to networks, endpoints, and all. In posture management, what we do is we try to identify misconfigurations, compliance issues, and maybe vulnerabilities, etc. in the environment. So in the cloud or network or endpoint, posture management is very crucial. So you identify all these configuration issues, compliance issues, vulnerability issues, and every integration issues and everything. Then you can rectify them. So there are dedicated solutions to identify posture-related issues as well. Then I think other words are mostly self-explanatory, but EDRM, Enterprise Digital Rights Management. So digital rights mean if you produce, if a certain organization produces certain content, let's say a movie or a song, or maybe, we don't know, certain company digital properties or anything. So you want to provide access based on the context sometimes, and depending on who is accessing and who, why, when, where, right? So these are the questions that we ask to identify the context. So if the same user is trying to access a certain content from different locations, we might not be able. So if you take Netflix, so with the same account that you have, the amount, the TV series, so like the movies or documentaries, so maybe other TV shows that you get in Netflix, based on the location, they are different. So I have a Netflix account, but if I use it in Sri Lanka, I will get a totally different set of movies and TV shows. But if I use the same account in maybe Japan or maybe USA or maybe England, so I will see a different set. So that's kind of digital rights management. You block access based on the location, even for the same user, right? Okay, so if you want to ask anything from this section, please ask at the end. So this is the Gartner Hype Cycle for network security, and I'll go through some of these things as well. So we have CASM, that means cyber asset attack surface management. That means so we have different assets in our environments. So there are solutions which can integrate, there are technologies which can integrate with all the cyber assets that we have in the environment at an API level. And they will identify, so it's kind of related to posture management as well. So you will actually not see different solutions for each of the words here. So there could be a solution which encapsulates different technologies or words here. That's how the industry works, right? So you will not see different solutions from vendors for each of these things. Okay. So cyber asset attack surface management is basically you integrate through other solutions using an API, and you identify the configuration issues, and you get an inventory of the assets. You increase the visibility as well, and you can identify like unknown gaps in the security configuration or maybe a workflow, and you can automatically deploy policies to remediate them. Right? Automation and orchestration are part of these things as well. So that's how you manage the attacks. So I explained in the previous slides that attack surface is constantly evolving. So you can't just manually identify these things. So there should be an automated solution which can integrate and provide you a single dashboard level view of what is happening in the network. Then let's say there's something called format preserving encryption. That means this encryption is actually not that, let's say, it doesn't provide a lot of, it doesn't increase the confidentiality level, but what happens is that when you are using different applications, when the data is encrypted, you can't use that data unless you encrypt them. But if you can, let's say, if you have a credit card number and you encrypt it in a way that the format of the credit card number is the same. I mean, you are getting a different credit card number, which is obviously not valid, but you are just sorry. You are just replacing the numbers with other numbers according to an encryption algorithm, but the basic format is preserved. So you can use that in other fields where in that application without without decrypting the actual data, right? So this is this could be useful in in banking applications, in call centers and all, and so the format is the same but it's encrypted, but you can use them in applications. Then things like remote browser isolation. I mean, these are becoming pretty normal. That means if we have the browser in our laptop, that means you are downloading all the web pages and code and everything to your browsers. But if we can have a cloud solution or maybe an external solution as an intermediary, as a broker, where the web page content is downloaded to that particular machine and executed, then you are safe. So you are executing that thing, that particular machine, but you are getting the output only. So you will not be attacked, right? That is called remote browser isolation. And NSPM, Network Security Posture Monitor. So I spoke about Posture Monitor. NDR is network detection and response, and under network detection and response, you have network advanced prevention, and you might have something called NBA, network behavior analytics. So these are all interrelated, and these are protocol decoding techniques and baselining techniques, pattern recognition, and sandboxing, and attack lifecycle detection. So everything is included there under network. Then things like so other things are pretty self-explanatory, but SD-WAN, I think in Sri Lanka now people are trying to deploy SD-WAN as well. I mean, if you take the Sri Lankan context, this will not be the exact picture because we are actually a bit behind certain global trends. But now people are trying to, I mean, like not drastically, but I mean, like in the region, I think we are kind of advanced. But when we compare with the global standards, we might be bit behind. So SD-WAN is also becoming a hot topic in the industry as well, where you can connect multiple links coming from multiple different technologies like internet links, MPLS links and all, where you can load balance and achieve high availability, and also you can do WAN optimization, QoS. So there are a lot of things that you can do to save a lot of cost as well. So SD-WAN is something that people with several branches are trying to deploy. And content disarmament reconstruction, that means basically sanitizing documents and other like let's say PDF files or Word files or whatever. So you get it into a sandbox and you remove the macro content and other executable content from that document, and you send the clean document to the customer. So and also cloud web, that means web application and API level security. And so web application security is pretty common, but API level security and API level threat protection is also coming up. Then if we take endpoint security, as you can see, most of these things are pretty common. And so we are kind of reaching the maturity level of all the endpoint security, endpoint related technologies that we have. There's nothing much coming up, but there are two things. XDR. So XDR is basically cross-layer detection and cross-layer and extended detection and response, where you try to correlate information, the detection logs, metadata, telemetry data, and all these things, and coming up from different layers of. So I spoke about defense in depth and layered security. So you correlate all the information coming up from different layers, and you give the user a single story, a single graphical picture that they can easily follow, easily understand, and easily comprehend. So they can just click on a certain object and right click on it, or maybe expand it and do forensics, do detection, do other correlations, and hunt for information. And so it's pretty easy even for a non-security analyst to take action based on these XDR related stories. Now all the vendors are coming up with these XDR stories. So if you are looking for a solution, then it's better to go with the solution which has a roadmap for a complete XDR approach. So XDR is extended cross-layer detection and response. Okay. And I think other things are pretty easy for you to understand, but BEC, business email compromise protection, BEC protection. That means, as I mentioned, there are a lot of phishing attacks, and people are targeting high-level, high-valued people in the organization, like maybe CEOs, CFOs, COOs, I don't know, any C-level person in the company. So if you hack into that person's account, then it's pretty easy to send an email out from that person's account and ask someone to do something, right? And so they can pretty easily fool other people and get things done. But there are advanced technologies to prevent these things. I mean, like to detect phishing sites using machine vision and all. And there are something called writing style analysis from a certain vendor as well. So they come up with a unique DNA or something like a unique signature for that user's email writing pattern. And you can easily identify, you can create a signature, I mean, based on the user's email writing pattern. I mean, we all use different punctuations, grammar styles, words, and emojis and all in an email. So once you identify, once you go through enough emails, you can develop a pattern. And if someone tries to hack into that person's email account and send an email out, if you can compare that pattern with the signature or the DNA that you have. So you can probably say with a certain probability whether that person's account is being hacked or not, right? That's possible. So that is business email compromise. And another thing, application security. There are a lot of technologies involved in there. Most of the things I explained earlier as well, so I'm not going to go into detail about those things. But something coming up is policy as a code. That means you don't stop just by defining a policy. You can code the policy out using a high-level language like maybe YAML or maybe I don't know, maybe Python or something, and you can. It's basically a script, and you can feed that script file into a policy engine, And once you feed that policy into the policy engine, it will be integrated with other solutions that we have, and you can actually get an idea about what testing methodology should be applicable for different solutions, right? So you can search it out. Policy as a code is coming up. Then chaos engineering we spoke about, API security, SASE we spoke about, and something very important, privacy by design, and you will know why. So we are going to talk about the Data Protection and Privacy Act in the end as well. So privacy by design is pretty important. So you need to design your applications and systems from the scratch itself, from the design phase itself, to protect the privacy of people and to protect the privacy of the data. That means privacy by design. So it's a concept, and there are if you know about the software development lifecycle, SDLC and all, so you will know, I mean, how to develop an application to protect the privacy of the data. So it's very important, and it's very important in the corporate environment as well. Whenever you develop something, that should be a key consideration, because otherwise in the future, when the Data Protection Act is implemented, you will be penalized if there's a data breach. And application monitoring, we can monitor the applications to identify any defect, or maybe a latency, or maybe certain broken links, or maybe a web page not loading up, or maybe to identify the failed transactions, or maybe other communication issues. Application performance, application monitoring is becoming a hot topic in Sri Lanka as well. And service mesh. So now all the applications are microservices, and so under one microservice there could be there could be hundreds or maybe hundreds of containers. So you have one big application, and you have different microservices, and under one microservice there could be a lot of containers, right? And everything will be talking to everything will be talking with everything else, and so you should have a mechanism to control that communication. That's where service mesh is coming up. So under one service, you have a sidecar, and you have something like a proxy, where the proxy is used to achieve the communication with the other services, so containers. So it's an integrated, it's like a grid, or it's like a mesh, but with the service mesh, you can easily control the communication. Then bot management. When we hear the word bot, we think it's malicious, but not always. There are useful bots as well, like Google crawlers. You need to allow Google crawlers to come into your website or application for you to to ease your work, or maybe to get certain analytics done. But you need to prevent malicious bots coming in as well. So while you allow the good bots to come in, you should prevent malicious bots from coming in. That's possible in bot management. Then mobile application security testing. You have static testing as well as dynamic testing. So you should test the static code, and you should also test the code dynamically. And there are something called interactive application security testing as well, IAST. So interactive application security testing, dynamic testing, static testing, those come under application security as well. And DevSecOps. So earlier we had DevOps, but now this CI/CD pipeline is also coming up. So there's a continuous integration, continuous development, as well as the DevOps environment, where development and operations is kind of interrelated. But now you have to implement security for the whole life cycle as well. That's where DevSecOps comes in. So unless you provide full security for the complete pipeline, there will be a lot of issues. So you need to focus on DevSecOps as well. So last but not least, most important thing, security operations. So under security operations, there are a lot of things that we need to focus. So XDR, I explained, so I'm not going to go into XDR again, but some things, there are certain things like DRSP and TI services. So TI means State Intelligence Services. DRSP means Digital Risk Protection Service. I mean, basically, what they do is like, so when you come to the digital landscape of a company, you have social media sites, websites, you have a domain name, and you open up your accounts to different services as well. And so you continuously send data, you continuously receive data. So the complete digital presence of the company needs to be monitored, right? I mean, if the domain name might be referred in dark web, or maybe in underground criminal channels, or maybe that domain name could be targeted by malicious users. You might be incurring data leakages as well, and there could be social media attacks. And so you have to protect against this, and you have to detect this as well. And in that intelligence, you have to integrate with a lot of other third-party threat intelligence service providers, and they will provide you all the threat-related data according to according to your preference and according to what you have configured in your environment. So usually TI and DRPS solutions come together. So mostly they are come together and may be provided by a single vendor. Then there are something called breach and attack simulation. So earlier we had penetration testing and vulnerability testing, but now we have a mechanism to test the effectiveness of our information security solutions very easily. That means customers can deploy these breach and attack simulation solutions in their environment, and they can deploy attacks within the network, and they can see how effective the solutions are in detecting or preventing those attacks, right? So they can get a complete idea about how they are behaving in the network. So if a vendor or service provider goes and deploy a solution, the customer can deploy an attack automatically. It's very easy. You can create a workflow, and the solution will do everything else for you, and the attack will happen. And if that is detected, the solution will detect that as well. And if it's not detected, it will give you a complete report on why it was not detected, where the misconfigurations and what are the remediation actions that you can take. And security orchestration, automation, and response. So earlier we had SIM solutions, but now we have SOAR solutions. In SOAR solutions, you can actually run something like a playbook, right? So the SIEM part might identify something, but the SOAR part will actually connect with different solutions, and it will automatically instruct other solutions what to do according to a playbook that you have defined, right? And so solutions are becoming a must in the modern threat landscape. And also we have deception platforms. Earlier we had honeypots, pretty simple things. You deploy a honeypot in your environment to lure in the attacks, and attackers will go into that honeypot thinking that it's the actual production network, and they will do some malicious activities there. But now we have sophisticated deception platforms where vendors can deploy complete and isolated environment similar to a customer's production environment, and they will lure in attackers similar to the honeypots, but the monitoring capabilities, reporting capabilities, investigating capabilities are very sophisticated compared with these traditional honeypots. So in deception platforms, you will be able to correlate, detect, identify, trace back, do forensics, investigate everything that the attacker does in that environment. So attacker thinks that they are in the production environment, but they are actually behaving within this deception platform. So these are sophisticated technologies compared with honeypots, but the concept is more or less the same, except the capabilities, right? So other things are pretty self-explanatory as well, and most of the things you saw on other Gartner hype cycles. So something else I wanted to highlight before I go to the next section. So first thing is that this pyramid of pain from David Bianco, and so this is how we detect an attack. Okay, there are certain things that we can detect in the attack. We detect when an attack is happening. It could be simple hash values, or maybe IP addresses, domain names, network or host artifacts, or maybe like these are the things that we can detect. So hash value detection is pretty trivial and easy, and IP addresses not that easy as hash values, but easy. Domain names getting simpler when you go up. Network and host artifacts, you have to search through a lot of logs or maybe files and other telemetry data and metadata, a bit annoying compared with the lower level ones. And if the attackers are using sophisticated tools, it's very challenging for the information security analyst to detect those things, or maybe the solution to detect those things. And if the attacker is using techniques, tactics, and procedures, TTPs, it's very tough for a certain solution to detect those things. So that's why. So you can do some research on this thing. I just wanted to show this as a guide, and that's why you see this MITRE attack framework. So all the modern security solutions and products are designed according to this MITRE attack. So MITRE attack has MITRE usually monitors APT groups which deploy advanced persistent threats worldwide. So I think as of now, MITRE monitors around 130 something attack groups, 133 as I remember when I last looked, and they have something called tactics and techniques. So you can see the tactics in this horizontal bar, and you can see techniques for each tactic in each of these columns. So tactics are like visions, the ultimate objective that the attacker wants to achieve. Techniques are like missions. So if you have a vision statement, then there are different missions that you can develop to achieve that vision, right? So in the same way, attackers have certain high-level objectives which are called tactics, and to achieve that high-level objective, there could be different techniques, right? Different executions that the attacker can follow. So if you take this very simple tactic, initial access. So if an attacker wants to achieve initial access, they can deploy various like techniques, right? So phishing and maybe like let's say supply chain compromise, as we explored earlier, or maybe deploying a drive-by compromise, maybe say doing an exploit. You see. So a tactic will have different techniques, right? So this framework is an extended version of the cyber kill chain we had previously. So now all the solutions are developed according to this MITRE framework. So all these techniques and tactics have number formats. So the full attack life cycle will be broken down into these techniques and tactics. So it's pretty easy for someone to like break it down, analyze it, detect it, and correlate it, and do further investigation. So whatever the information security, mostly advanced prevention solutions, email security solutions, endpoint security, web security, those things have this MITRE framework, and you will see these things in the future as well. Do some research on MITRE framework and try to see what they do, and try to get an understanding about the main tactics and techniques which I use. I mean, like, you don't have to know everything, but it's good if you know everything, but like try to get an understanding about what is being done here. And so next few slides, I'm not going to go into detail. I just wanted to create certain reference slides for you. So you will get the recording, and if you want, you can just go through these slides, because I wanted to categorize some important information security solution areas, and I have listed down according to my knowledge. I think this is a pretty comprehensive list. And if you want to achieve endpoint security, these are the things that you need to deploy. Okay, starting from signature-based detection and basic endpoint security solutions, you are going to advanced levels as well. So this covers the whole breadth of endpoint security solutions that we have. So I think these are pretty self-explanatory as well. So you might have seen these things. One thing is a new kind of, I mean, not new, but user and entity behavior analysis. That means, and you will see this in SIEMs and modern solutions as well, where they actually correlate and analyze the user behavior and like any behavior of an application or device in the network, and you can create a baseline or create some kind of pattern. And if something if something happens which is not normal, if something is out of order and something is abnormal, based on that pattern or baseline, you can easily detect it, right? So this is what happens in the user and entity behavior analysis, and most of the other things I already explained, and you should know most of these things, because these are the basic. And when we come to email security as well, so these are the technologies that you need to deploy under email security. And so machine learning and behavior analytics are not only in endpoints, but they are deployed in email security as well. And data classification and DLP, not only in endpoints, you have to do it at the email as well. And I spoke about writing style analysis, how it can prevent business email compromise. And also under email security, I spoke about going beyond normal awareness. So phishing awareness and engaging and practical training methodologies are very, very important in an corporation to train the employees to detect and report sophisticated phishing campaigns. Okay. So when you get the recording, just refer to these things, and you can easily Google if you don't know anything, but these are kind of pretty basic. And web security as well. So web security solutions can be deployed as a proxy on-prem or maybe a gateway as well. And these technologies are also like pretty common in the environment. There's nothing out of ordinary to describe here. And so I'll just keep it for 1 or 2 seconds so that you can refer in the video. And if you see anything that you don't know, please type in a question so I can explain at the end. Mobile security, I mean, most people do not use mobile security, but even if you are using personal device, please use mobile security. And it's high time for corporations to deploy mobile security and MDM as well. And I haven't seen a lot of organizations in Sri Lanka deploying this because I don't know why, but even like I mean, all the employees have all the employees access their corporate applications and data and email and all from their mobile devices, but people don't think of deploying mobile security agents and MDM agents in mobile devices. I mean, it doesn't matter whether you are using a corporate device or personal device. The corporates should know what to do. I mean, all the endpoints, most of the endpoint security technologies are applied in mobile world as well. But other than that, you can actually create partitions, and you can allow only certain partitions to have corporate data, and you can block unwanted applications, and you can push updates and upgrades, and you can check for certain compliances in the mobile devices as well. And if certain compliances are not matched, corporate data access can be restricted. So these things need to be done in mobile devices, because everything all the data and everything valuable are there in your devices. So these things have to be considered from companies. And under cloud security or application security, so when we say cloud, we have a private cloud, public cloud, and hybrid cloud. So in cloud security, there are a lot of things that you need to do. I mean, in clouds, you have different applications, you have serverless functions, and you have workloads as well, you have databases. Everything that you have in the normal infrastructure, you have in the cloud. So cloud workload security is a different thing. You can't just deploy a normal endpoint security solution in the cloud workloads, because the environment is different. So when you are talking about cloud workloads, try to see whether you can actually deploy a different solution. And also, there are certain things like virtual patching, log inspection, and file integrity monitoring that you can deploy in workloads as well. Then we see container environments, Kubernetes and runtime Kubernetes and Docker environments. And even if we take a container image, there are two types. I mean, before deploying and after deploying. So we call it runtime and image state. So if you are deploying a container, you should scan it even before deployed. That we call image scanning. So you can identify the malware and vulnerabilities and maybe other configuration issues in the image before they are being deployed. And so even during the runtime, the solution should be able to integrate with that container through the Docker platform and the Kubernetes environment and identify all the attacks which are happening at the container level. And something I did not explain before, runtime application self-protection or RASP. Here we actually insert a certain library or a small software code within the application itself. We don't do much change within the application code. We enter a small library or a small software code within the application, and the application can protect. The application can actually protect itself against certain attacks. I mean, you can detect. You can monitor all the entry points to that application, and it can detect like malicious communications or maybe malicious attack, malicious exploits coming in, or maybe malware or ransomware trying to penetrate into the application. So that's called runtime application self-protection. We spoke about application testing, dynamic and static. So I'm not going to go into detail of that, but blockchain-based solutions are coming in this domain as well, where you can preserve the integrity and where you can preserve the confidentiality of a certain workflow. And blockchain is becoming a huge role in the industry, maybe transports, logistics, information security, or maybe banking applications, fintech, and maybe in a lot of government work processes as well. So you should have an understanding about how the blockchain can help to achieve better security and better platform integration. So network security, this is a huge list, but to save time, because these things I already explained the new words, and the old words you can actually see here. Use this as a reference point. So I just entered this as a reference point. So use this if you want to do any further research. So last slide in this section, security operations. So you have to have, I mean, the ultimate goal of every customer is to have a security operations center, maybe in a small scale as well. So for a security operations center, you need to have a lot of sensors. So all the previous slides explain the different security sensors that you should have in your environment. But these things are the solutions that you can actually use to correlate, detect, and do further investigations and forensics and do response activities on top of those centers. So I already explained these deception technologies, be it an attack simulation, XDR, IAM, PAM, so SIEM, everything, threat intelligence, everything. So, but I wanted to show them under one slide, so you know what you need to deploy if you want, or you know what you know how to consult someone right now if someone wants to develop a SOC. Right. So now we are coming to the last 3-4 slides. It will take another maybe 10 minutes maximum, and maybe I'll try to finish it before that. So are we really ready as a country or maybe as a community? So what I see is that we are actually lacking skilled professionals in this industry because like people are trying to migrate, and sometimes in most of the customer environments, they don't focus on developing their skill set. They don't focus on developing their knowledge. They just try to rely on vendors or partners, and they mostly do a bad job when it comes to developing the necessary skill set. But I think the customers are the most important people in the chain, so they should focus more on developing their skill set. So as I explained earlier as well, we are a bit behind the global trends, not drastically, but I think we are behind certain trends, and we are not adapting them in a timely manner. But those are the things that happens when you live in a small country. So we can't blame, but and also not following best practices. And so when like most of the system integrators in the industry, they just buy a solution and resell and deploy it in customer environments, and they don't do justification for the technology or product. They don't follow the best practices, so that's pretty bad. So you should always educate the customers to follow best practices, and you should follow them. Follow them as well. And without going from point to point, I'll just try to explain them holistically. So if we take the government sector, they are at critical risk. So I have worked with the SI for 6 years, and then again with the principal vendor for another for 5-6 years, and also now I'm working with another SI as well. So I have seen a lot of government entities, and so they are at critical risk. So they don't have secure environments, and so probably because they don't have a complete vision, because they are not guided properly from a national and central maybe advisory body or maybe entity. So there's a lot to do in that area. When it comes to coordination and all, there are a lot of issues as well. But the common issue that we see is maybe budget approvals and the place that is given to the security function within an organization. So, but now we see a change in that mentality. But we have to focus on integrated architectures. We have to focus on platform-oriented design thinking. So you can't just have multiple systems. You should have a single platform which is connected with each other, and you should have a holistic vision on achieving something. So that's what should happen. So if you follow that practice, then a lot of issues will be sorted, right? And also influences and domination. So people sometimes try to certain solution providers or companies try to deploy a solution in customer environments without proper requirement gathering. They don't even think whether that solution is right for the customer. With certain influencing mechanisms and using certain dominating approaches, they just deploy a solution and earn money. So that's not healthy for the community or healthy for the industry. So people should refrain from doing that as well. And also, some of the positive signs that I see in the industry are more young people getting into the field. That is a very good thing. And I see a lot of young people participating in these events as well. And there are a lot of activities and awareness sessions done by professional bodies, and even in ISC Square, even with Sujit, I have seen a lot of sessions going on, lot of new initiatives to teach people, to like train people, to give awareness about technologies, products, and solutions. So a lot of activities done by like all the professional bodies in the industry. Even the educational institutes are coming up with cybersecurity degrees and other educational programs, which is pretty good. And government is also trying to focus on cybersecurity and with the national vision as well. And there are a lot of laws and regulations in this area coming up, and already some are already approved from the parliament as well. I mean, Data Protection and Privacy Act from the government, Central Bank regulations for licensed banks, Cybersecurity Act, Computer Crimes Act, and Electronic Transactions Act. So those are the things that people should read and understand. I mean, even for you as cybersecurity learners and practitioners, you should have a good understanding about all these laws and regulations in the industry. Right. Final two slides. So data protection act. So this act was this act will be applied to both private and public entities. So whether you are working for a government institute or public or a private institute, it doesn't matter. This will apply for apply to both the segments, and this was approved on 9th March 2022. And this act will come into play within next 18 to 36 months. That means you have time to prepare for it. Let's say until the end of next year, hopefully. No, until September next year, because we have to take from March this year. So until next year September, you have time to get ready, and after that you have another 18 months to like develop all the systems and architectures and mechanisms, and after that this act will be hopefully fully online, and at that point of time you should have a like comprehensive architecture. So all the solutions, technologies, and everything that I've described described before will directly or indirectly support this data protection and privacy. So you should know about those technologies and how to deploy them. That's why I combined these two. There are certain keywords in the act as well. Personal data. Personal data is any data that can identify a person. Health records, financial records, maybe credit card data or identity card numbers. And if we take USA, so something like social security numbers, so anything that can identify a person. Data subjects are the people who own these data. And the act also talks about a data protection authority. That means a single authority which actually governs the complete data protection and privacy function, which other entities will consult. And there's something called data controller and data processor. Data controller is the entity which is responsible for that data, and data processor is the one who actually processes that data. So if you supply certain data to a bank, then that bank will be the data controller, but that bank can actually outsource certain functions to data processor. So data processor will actually do the functions, but data controller, the bank, will be the ultimate entity which has the responsibility. So this act has various things, and it describes various policies and technical controls, and it specifies how certain regulations can be applied on processing of personal data, and it talks about how to implement this data protection authority. So it has different sections under that, and it talks about the rights of the data subjects as well, and it tries to educate people on the data localization for public authorities. I mean, public authorities are not authorized to process data outside the country unless they are specifically allowed from the data protection authority. So it addresses all these things. And this final slide of the presentation. So these are the sections of the Data Protection Act. So this is a guideline. So it talks about the principles of data processing, like how you need to do it, accountability, how it should be transparent, how to preserve the confidentiality and integrity of data, how to keep the accuracy of the data, and how you can retain the data, the limitations for retention, and the purpose of data retention and processing as well. And speaks about right of the data subject. I mean, if I submit data to a bank or something, I should be able to delete the data if I want. I should be able to rectify the data. I should be able to withdraw my consents. Maybe I can object to certain processings. So at any time I should be able to access the data as well. And direct marketing, we get SMS messages, email messages, promotional messages from telecommunication service providers, banks, and everything. We get calls from insurance companies, and they have somehow managed to get data from other entities, but they are calling us without our our approval. So, but with the Data Protection Act coming into play, these things will be monitored and affected. Because if you don't want another entity calling us without our consent, so that cannot happen. So you can't basically share your data with someone else if you own certain private data, right? And also it talks about obligations of controllers and processors, how they are responsible, how they are accountable, and how they should implement certain controls. And it talks about appointment of a data protection officer, DPO, as well. And finally, it talks about data protection authority, the powers, functions, how it can govern how it can govern data processors and data controllers, what directives and orders it can take. And last but not least, after 36 months, if you are not adhering to the Data Protection Act, then there will be penalties, and maybe there could be certain exemptions as well. So just think of this, because it will be applicable to every one of us, and all the technology solutions and product I mentioned earlier will indirectly or directly take you through the roadmap to adhere to Data Protection Act. So thank you very much for the session. I hope this session gave you some kind of information at least, or maybe some kind of guidance. So over to you, Sujit.
Niranjan, Thank you so much for this enlightening presentation. There were a lot of things you spoke. I like the Gartner hype cycle, which you spoke about, right? There were so many technologies in different stages.
Yeah.
And then you also touched upon the legislation aspect, which Sri Lanka is embarking on, or they have embarked on. So Niranjan, if you don't mind, can you stop sharing the screen? And then,
Sure. Yes.
yeah,
Sure.
thank you.
Right.
So very quickly, I mean, there are no questions, but I would like to ask you one question before we wrap up the session for the day. There's so many things we discussed, right? And we are very much in a very interesting time in the space of cybersecurity. If somebody were to ask, we're right in the middle of the year, we want to take stock, where should he or she start?
So I didn't capture the last part.
Right. The question is, we've discussed so much of technology, the Gartner hype cycle, the legislations, and with so much of constraints on budgets for the Sri Lankan organizations, if they were to do a reassessment of the current status, where should they start? Or what is that one or two things they should actually be looking at as a prerequisite?
Okay. At this moment, I think, Sujit, now, I mean, like, it's pretty obvious that no one can deploy all these technologies and solutions we described. So it's impossible with the budgets and skills and everything that we are going through. But I think a good point will be, I mean, we all have maybe employee data or customer data or whatever stored in our environment, and it's pretty sure that all the entities will have to adhere to this data protection and privacy act as well. So if you concentrate on the data that you have as the starting point and see what policy controls and technical controls that you have applied to protect that data, and you try to go outwards from that, it will be beneficial. Because I can't exactly say that you should focus on endpoint security or cloud security or operational security or anything. But if you focus on the data and like, I mean, like, the first thing is that they should create a policy. I mean, I don't think most of the companies, I mean, large companies, obviously they have, but you should create a policy to protect the data, and from that you should focus on implementing simple technical controls, maybe endpoint security or DLP and data discovery or classification, and from that you can move into other technologies, and maybe at the end you can have you can do activities like red teaming, blue teaming, so but those are sophisticated. But if data will be the pivot point, I think, if you want to think of a strategy.
Absolutely. So your view is that the organizations take a data-centric approach,
yes,
and build the preventive detective controls based on their risk appetite.
Yes. And other thing is that that's my personal view. I mean, with the cost cuttings, budget cuttings, and IMF controls coming in, and transparency and corruption reduction they request. I mean, both the private and government institutes will have to think of ways to move into cloud, I guess. And because like with the on-prem data centers and everything, you can't just manage. I mean, like, it will be, this is the right time for people to look into ways of going to cloud infrastructure and cloud solutions as much as they can, I guess.
So I guess in essence, what you're saying is this is the ideal time to look at transformation.
Transformation, of course.
Yeah.
Complete transformation.
Absolutely. So transform your workloads, transform your applications,
yes.
And also
I mean,
transform
we talk about all these digital transformation processes and things, but we don't change the way we think. So I think it's the right time to, if you really want to go through digital transformation, I mean, especially the government, if they want to cut costs, they will have to go through a drastic digital transformation process. I mean, even the public entities as well. So I think it's the high time to change the way we can do real transformation from us, within us.
Absolutely. So with that note, Niranjan, I'm going to bring you back on another date We may not do a presentation, but we will have a dialogue, right? We'll probably bring a couple of other professionals to the platform, and let's discuss as to what we should be doing in looking at the transformation journey.
Of course.
Right? If you are to take a data-centric approach, what is that the organization should do? So we will also use that opportunity to probably provide insights in terms of what they should do to have quick wins, and also probably look at some of the problems which people may have from time to time, and help them clarify them. Right?
Of course.
So Niranjan, with that note, I want to thank you for this
Thank you,
enlightening presentation. I mean, this is not the first time you've been with us, but your presentations are awesome. It is content rich, right? There's so much. We can take each and every slide and probably discuss separately, right? So with that note, I just want to quickly thank you on behalf of my board and the members for being with us, spending time and talking about the current status of cybersecurity, or what we should be looking at as a country or as a region. Right? For those people who will be listening to our recording on YouTube and LinkedIn, please leave all your questions for Niranjan. Right? And as he said, he will be checking on those questions. He will answer them. Or if you do have any other questions, you can also mail it to me, president@isc2colombochapter.com. We'll be more than happy to respond to all your questions or provide guidance in terms of your approach to cybersecurity. So with that note, thank you once again. Have a great evening and take care.
Thank you, everyone. Have a great day. Thanks, Sujit. Thanks for everyone for participating. See you.